Hi, I'm Sharon Coldren, the president of the Coral Bay Community Council, a nonprofit organization on St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And what we are doing today is we're at the University of the Virgin Islands and have Allison Fraley, who is the head of solid waste management on the island of Kauai. And we brought her here to tell us how the island of Kauai manages their solid waste management. They have 72,000 residents, not too different from us. They have a lot of tourists, 20,000 a day. They're an isolated island in the middle of the ocean, so they have a lot of problems in common. So we figured we could learn something from her.
Okay, so since she's been here, can you tell some of the places and some of the agencies she has spoken with thus far?
Yes, while she's been here this week, on Monday night, she gave a presentation at Antilles School that was open and well publicized for St. Thomas residents. Yesterday, Tuesday, she met with solid waste management staff at the VI Waste Management Authority and with their executive director and board members. And they had 4 hours of presentation and discussion together. I think they all learned a lot collectively. On Wednesday, she's here at the University of the Virgin Islands, and Thursday and Friday, she's going to be on St. John, speaking as part of the Plastic Free Island Conference that's being held there.
So, what's in store right now for your organization? Any more up and coming events that you'll have some more of these public forums?
We don't have any particular public forums planned. However, if you watch the daily news, there is a series of ads coming up encouraging people to compost and reduce waste. And think about before you buy and things like that, which will help to reduce waste. Also, on August 15th in Coral Bay, restaurants there will be celebrating the fact that they're going all compostable with their takeout items. And we're inviting people to come there and enjoy the restaurants and enjoy the fact that they will not be creating more plastic for the landfill.
Perfect. Three, two.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. Today we have a presentation by Allison Fraley, who is the Solid Waste Management Coordinator for the island of Kauai in Hawaii. She's going to be bringing us information about how they run their system there, how she runs it. I'm Sharon Coldren with the Coral Bay Community Council. We have a grant from USDA that has allowed us to do a lot of recycling outreach and solid waste management outreach, specifically for our community in Coral Bay and St. John, but also with value to the whole U.S. Virgin Islands. I want to particularly also call out Scott Haynes, who is our staff member. I'm a volunteer, he's a staff member, and who has done an incredible job of putting all kinds of outreach activities together, some of which you'll see in the daily news upcoming, some of which you'll see on the ground in Coral Bay, if you come out to Coral Bay, and today's and this week's full set of presentations by Allison Fraley here in St. Thomas, and tomorrow and Friday she'll be on St. John. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to Allison.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Aloha, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. So I've been working at the County of Kauai for 17 years, and I was the first recycling coordinator they ever hired. So they did have solid waste management programs in place when I started, but because they had somebody on staff focusing on recycling and able to advocate for it and get more funding in, we've been able to really grow and develop programs. And because I was successful there, I got I call it promoted into garbage, where I get to kind of oversee and help with the other areas. I know them, but I'm not as deeply familiar with the other areas. But I did want to share the whole picture with you today so that you could see what we do on Kauai. So we'll start off by just a quick overview of what I wanted to talk about, which is a description of the whole system. And so it's going to include landfill and transfer stations, as well as our program where we collect trash from residential households. More detail on our recycling and waste diversion programs, and then the costs of all of these programs, as well as the opportunities to increase diversion. So, anybody been to Hawaii before? It's beautiful like here, yes, you know. And then I'm from Kauai, which they call the Garden Isle. And it is geographically isolated, of course, especially, being right out there in the middle of the Pacific. And we have a pretty small population, the smallest of all the large islands in the chain, 72,000. We have a lot of visitors, about 20,000 on any given day. And the land area, it's a round island, pretty good land area. The culture is a really interesting mix. It's a Hawaiian, Polynesian, Asian, Hawaiian, Polynesian, and Western culture mixed all together. And also our economy is mainly visitor industry. We have a little bit of ag and some military going on. Aloha means hello and goodbye, and it also means love. And Hawaii has a really loving culture. Family is the most important thing, and people are very friendly, and they love humor, and they like to kick back, and they're humble, and they appreciate the natural beauty. So when people, they do what's called staycations, they'll just take off time and just go camping, is what people like to be outside, enjoy nature. So that really lends itself to people being environmentally responsible. And so Malama Aina means to care for and nurture the land, and it's a phrase that many people use quite often. So our government structure is that the county is the island, and we're led administratively by our mayor, Bernard Carvalho. And he's been really supportive of recycling. He's about to end his term in office. He'll have been there 10 years. We have a legislative body of 7 council members, and they serve at large. So they're not assigned to any particular region, but they only have 2-year term limits, which is a little restricting for them. And they just imposed a 4-year or 4 terms as the limit that they can serve, but then they just go off and come back on. So we've had some council members be there for 20 years, 30 years. We have some lifers on there, and they have meetings every week. So there'll be a meeting of the whole, and then there'll be a committee meeting the next week. And the meetings, they're televised, they're live streamed when they're happening, they're on the computer. We have a really good website where all the agendas, every meeting, you can see it. And so it's very transparent what happens at council. Hi, welcome. No problem. So as far as our recycling rate, because that's always been my interest in working in this job, we have been able to significantly increase it in the last 15 years, even the last 10 years, as you can see here. 15 years, more than double. And so I'll be showing you the programs and how we've done that. But it's good that we can be above the national average. It's really hard because, as you know, on islands we have a lot of significant challenges. So we're proud of the fact that we have a 43% recycling rate. Oops. So overall, I did want to talk about costs, and the county's responsible for many programs on Kauai. So go ahead. Yes.
Of the overall amount of things, or is it of the recyclable item?
So it's everything. So that includes, and we'll show a slide, but it includes green waste and metal and tires, things you wouldn't traditionally think of as a recyclable from your home. But those are usually the bigger numbers, like the green waste and the metals. Yeah.
And how many people lives in Kauai?
The residential population is 70,000. The tourists, though, really contribute, because we have business waste and we have residential waste. So the tourists contribute to the waste stream as well. And so that's 20,000 tourists.
Flowing.
Yeah, any day, we have high season and low season, but average about 20,000.
And what is the production per capita of solid waste?
I don't have that figure for you. I know that 230 tons goes to the landfill every single day. 230 tons
For those 70,000 people.
for the 7,000, so you could do the math, I
Oh,
guess. Do the math. Come on, guys.
Call
We're in
90,000.
Right.
30
tons.
30
There you
tons
go.
per
You divide it by-
9,000 people.
Yeah.
Remember to divide it by 365.
Okay. Yeah, I'll figure it out. Those per capita costs, people kind of manipulate those too, so I don't normally use that one. So regarding, the expenses of the county is that we do own and operate our landfill, and we just have one and it's filling up. So the annual cost to do that is about $8.5 million. We also operate what we call transfer stations, where waste is every day taken to and then moved from there to the landfill. And then, so it's kind of like a holding space for waste. And then also we do the curbside trash collection for 18,000 homes. And that costs $5.3 million. Those are kind of lumped together, those costs. And then we have our recycling program that's $4 million. So our total budget for solid waste is about 17.5, which is 9% of our overall county budget. And this budget, it's an operating budget from our property taxes. So we all.
What the industry standard is for that per capita? I mean, is that 9% the good, efficient, or is it a lot in comparison?
I don't know that. Sorry about that. I could look that up. But there's so many municipalities doing so many different things. It's a tricky question. Now, as far as us being able to offset costs, we actually do. So when I first started, we did have landfill tip fees in place, and that's when a commercial hauler goes to the landfill. They pay a fee per ton to be able to drop waste there. And so we get $4.9 million in tip fees. That offsets our costs. And as well as for residential, we do charge a portion of the cost for people to have us service them, have us come to their home once a week and pick up trash. So this covers about 50% of our budget. So we have a EPA regulated landfill, and it started off before EPA regulated back in 1953. It was unlined, but adjacent in the same footprint. We actually opened a lined landfill in 1993 that's scheduled to close in about 10 years. And so because we have enough material there at this point, we just put in a methane gas capturing system, which can be used to generate some energy. Right now it's just flaring, and they're figuring out, how much they're going to be able to do. But we did just recently install that. So there's the tonnage, the 84,000 last year. It's been relatively the same for the last few years. And that's about 230 tons a day. And
that number includes commercial, residential,
Yes.
industrial?
Yes, it does. And we operate 7 days a week. So the way we do it is, because there's a regulatory component, we do hire, we contract Waste Management, Inc., a larger organization, a national organization that knows what they're doing. Not that we don't, but we prefer to have them just looking at compaction and doing the reporting on the regulatory side. So there's 3 staffers there that we contract on a long-term basis to do that. And then we provide with our county staff, union laborers, to operate the landfill, to take in the material, use dozers to run over the material, make sure it's flat, cover it every day. And then we operate a scale house, the truck scale, and everything that goes in the landfill is weighed, and everything that comes out is weighed. And so we operate with a system called Weighmaster. And then we actually pay Waste Management a fee based on landfill tonnage. And so for this current phase of our landfill that we're in, we have always had about 9 or 10 years left on it. It's just that we do things to be able to extend the life because we can't find a new site for a landfill. So since I've been working there 17 years ago, we've done 2 lateral expansions, like gone lined a space and then gone into we call it a cell, and then done another one of those. And then I think it was 60 feet when I started. We got permitted to 100, then 120 feet to go up. So it's in a very flat area on the west side of the island, and it's just kind of this kind of mountainous hill looking thing at this point. We are going to do one more lateral expansion. We just started doing that work, the design work. And so we have a really high tip fee. It's one of the highest that I've ever seen, $119 a ton. We has been raised twice since I started. We started when I started was $79. So the reason we're raising it, or we did raise it, was this is what we think is the true cost. There's lots of different factors, including post-closure costs and a lot to factor into it, but this is what we think is the right price to charge for the work that we're doing for these companies that are dropping waste.
What was the public reaction or the commercial reaction?
It was not that bad, actually. Yeah, it was okay. I mean, I understand, I know what's going on here is to initially charge is a lot harder than just raising the fee. What ends up happening with us is that we have one really huge hauler that has most of the commercial accounts. It's only businesses that are charged, not residents. And they're merely just passing their fees on to their existing customers. You know, they're not going to, so it's nothing to them except just tell their customer the price went up. You know, so, and we just didn't get a lot of businesses coming in and testifying that it wasn't possible. Everybody knows that the landfill's filling up and that we have to do something. And actually, a high tip fee can be a deterrent for just dropping waste. If you have programs that people can, that commercial can participate in, then they'd rather do that than pay the tip fee, right? So it can be a good thing.
So do you develop comprehensive programs or alternatives to the tip fee, or is the tip fee put in place and then programs developed?
Programs develop first. That's a really good question, and it's really essential. One time we had a kind of snafu where one of my managers was trying to do the other way around, and I'm the one getting all the calls, and it's really hard. How do you tell someone, sorry, there's this program you have to participate in, but you don't have options, or you're going to get this big charge, but you don't have options. So that's the way you're supposed to do it: is set up the alternatives, set up the programs, and then raise fees or create mandates.
Is the tip fee uniform across all waste, or do you segregate out and you have a different fee, and that's an average of different
No,
fees charged for
this is
private
our
waste?
standard solid waste fee. Now there's some things like asbestos that we charge more for, but that's about it. We don't have varying fees. Some places do.
So if somebody comes in with a mix of C and D, it's going to be basically one
Yeah.
fee.
Yeah. And some places have like a C&D landfill where you only take that stuff to that side, and the tip fee might be different, but we don't have that.
Are the alternative options to final disposition in the landfill managed by waste management, or do you have other actors that get in charge?
Others. Yeah, you mean like for diversion, like
Yeah,
recycling
because
and stuff?
if you present the company that is burying the material to stop doing what makes them earn money,
Right.
they won't do it.
Yes, I totally understand that. Yes, Waste Management isn't a hauler on Kauai. They're a tech company. In Hawaii too, they're not a hauler. And we have a different private company that has different presences or different business entities. But yeah, it's not Waste Management. BFI used to be there, but they're not there either.
You
But
said
that's a
that
good point.
Raising the tip fee would be a deterrent would that result in, or do you guys have a problem with people dropping waste off in a vacant lot or at the end of the road or something like that, or is that not an issue?
We don't have that problem, although it's common in Hawaii for that problem to exist. We do things that I'll talk about to really prevent that, and we actually spend a lot of money to do that. That's a good question. So as far as siting a new landfill, we have been attempting this since the 90s. And when you start to, when you're doing this work, you're hiring consultants who are giving you, potential sites, because there's all these restrictions like proximity to airport and groundwater, and whether it's publicly owned, privately owned. There's all these factors that really limit the places you can go. But we did find, and we've spent, people have spent a lot of time serving on advisory boards and trying to select the sites and going through these blind, random, evaluations to figure out sites. And we have come down to select 3 sites since I've been working there, and 2 fell off, so we're down to the 1. And this is in Lahui, which is actually, when I show you a map of the island, it's a good location as far as being central for hauling. The road up to it is this country road. It's actually shown in the movie Jurassic Park when they're driving up to the, it's a beautiful mountainous road that is going to need a lot of improvement. $25 million worth of improvement. And there's some private landowners there that want a lot of stuff. And so we're going to have a lot of agreements, for us to, go through their land, and there's just a lot to it. So we're looking at spending a lot of money to get this new landfill sited, but it will be there a long time. I've been told even longer than 100 years, maybe double that. So it's just a priority always when you're running out of space, and you really can't ship. We can't. We've looked into it. We can't ship it to Oahu. Oahu has a population of 1 million, and they do have a waste-to-energy plant that they built a really long time ago that's working for them. They still have recycling. It's not competing amazingly, but we can't do that. It's just it's not going to work. So we have to figure out our solutions on our island. So we got to get this thing going. And
The conversion to an energy is about,
We've investigated that a lot. There's not with systems that we've found. So we've done, what happens with us is the mayor gets approached by all these different people that are telling him, oh, this is the greatest thing, you don't have to pay for it now, pay for it later or whatever. And he doesn't know, and we're telling him, okay, this is what you need. You need, to know that it's a proven technology and that this, that, and the other. And we finally went through competitive bid processes. First, a request for information, and then when it looked like, okay, maybe that might work, then we went to actual proposal, and what the evaluation committee found this last time, because it's happened several times, is that they just couldn't find anything that would actually work, that was proven to work for us. Yeah, it's the scale. It's a scale. Yeah. So Oahu does a mass burn, and they have a company that I'll think of the name of it, but it's they've been around a long time. I think it is a partner with Waste Management. Covanta is the company, and when they built that plant, that was a big deal. Now they haven't built one of those waste to energy plants in like 20 years, and so now they just been adding boilers, and like I said, it's working for them, but the scale is humongo compared to ours. What we found when we did one of our studies is that you'd need to have, I think it was 250 tons a day to make it work, but then that would compete with what if we wanted to do more recycling? Then we'd be having to compete. So that was our concern.
Has there been any issues with compliance, regulatory compliance in Hawaii?
We've had some issues. Who regulates us most closely is the state Department of Health, and they follow EPA.
I'm referring to the waste management facility in Hawaii.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
talking about the landfill and the transfer
I was
stations.
talking about the waste to energy facility.
Oh, waste to energy.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Probably not. I mean, they're pretty good over there. I've toured it a couple times. They're doing okay. Okay, so on Kauai, we have these transfer stations. Other people call them, on the other islands, they call them convenience centers. And what they are, they're kind of holding places for the waste before it goes to the landfill, which is on the far west side of the island. And so from the top, we have Hanalei, and there's Kaua'i next, right? And then down south a little bit is Lahui, and that's where we're going to build the new landfill. And then we have Hanapepe down at the bottom there. So 4 transfer stations. And the main purpose of those stations is to accept the waste that we collect when we go and do the curbside pickup at the households. And so the trash trucks that pick up the waste, they compact the waste, and then they dump it into these huge 100 cubic yard transfer trailers, and then the trailers squish the waste and then wait for more. And we'll do 2 hauls a day at each site out to the landfill. But there's some secondary uses of these transfer stations. One is that we do accept trash from residents for free, and we do charge like a base fee on the collection program, which I'll describe, but so that everybody's kind of paid, anybody who lives there has kind of paid their fair share. So we don't have to do any exchanges of money at the gate or anything. They can just go whenever they want, 7 days a week, and drop waste if they would like to. And then small businesses can also use the transfer stations. There's a limit on the truck size, 3/4 ton or less. And if you have a really small business, you can purchase a coupon at the DMV and go ahead and use the transfer station if you don't want to drive out to Kaua'i. And then we also have these recycling opportunities, not for your normal household waste, although some of the transfer stations are located close to our drop bins, which I'll describe later. But we have opportunities for green waste diversion, metals and appliance recycling, tires, propane tanks, and motor oil. So that's all there at the same place where the waste. So it's kind of a one-stop drop for a lot of people. And we have attendants there who are, directing people to the right place, keeping the facility clean, making sure the waste is going in and out, and everything's in compliance with the State Department of Health, because we don't have just one giant pile of all these recyclables. They have to be in designated spaces with a certain amount of material there. It can't exceed a limit and that kind of stuff. So our crews are making sure we're all in compliance.
No separation for plastics at that transfer station?
No, not for plastics. Not for the household recyclables. We have a separate program. So here's our very complicated signage. I wanted to talk about the refuse collection. So we do serve 18,000 single-family homes, most of the homes. We have a few multi-family. We just don't have a lot of that there. And those ones are served, so a few apartment buildings and things, condos that are serviced by private. And then there's a few private roads. But this is the majority of the households on Kauai are single family. And we used to have manual collection, which is a trash truck where you have guys hanging on the back, and then they go and grab containers that customers set out and then just throw them in. And we did some studies, some planning studies, and our consultant was saying, well, you should switch to automated, because I'm seeing that you have a lot of workman's comp claims, and eventually you're not going to lay anybody off, but eventually you could have fewer employees once these guys start retiring. And so we did take their advice, and then also the neighborhood aesthetic of having a cart, just one cart, instead of all these trash cans all over the place. So we did phase into automated, and this is, I don't know if you can see that robot arm that comes down and picks up the cart. It's something to see. And we have just a single driver on there. And it's been going quite well, although our trucks they're having problems. We've only had this in place for about 5 years, and our trucks are starting to have some problems. So that's something we've got to look at. But we have 6 routes. They operate 4 days a week all over the island. And then we have these semi-automated routes where we have very small streets or special situations where we need a smaller truck. And so we have this special truck where we have we have the guys on the back, and they pull the cart to a certain place so that it can be serviced. And as I said before, here's our budget that we have, you know, an $8.35 million expense for these two programs, and then we get some revenues from our residential collection, which is a portion of the cost of the program at 3.5. So I did want to talk about user fees because that's something that I really championed being in solid waste management, because the cost of service is $55 per household. Granted, it comes from property taxes, so people are paying for the service already. But once someone has to pay a little more from their pocket, they start to make connections about, you know, that this is something that costs money, something I should be aware of, something that I could reduce if you know, something that's important that costs money. So we just implemented a flat fee for service, and it was an ordinance that we passed, and I was surprised because it did not, it wasn't hard to pass. Only the mayor was like, oh no, I don't know, but then we convinced the mayor, and then the council was okay with it, the people were okay with it, and it happened. That was in 2011. So shortly thereafter, we got approached by E-Conservation Institute. They're the leaders in the field of this program called Pay As You Throw. And this is a variable rate for service, where if you have a big trash can, you pay more money. If you have a small trash can, you pay less. And so E-Conservation, through a grant, developed a plan for Kauai. And so that was really great. At first I thought we shouldn't do it because normally it's associated with a curbside recycling program, so that you know, it's easy for the customer to go, well, I'm just not going to put it in that bin, I'll put it in this bin. So that's how I've always seen it done. But when I was speaking with the consultant, they said, no, there's Pay As You Throw without curbside recycling, you know, which we don't have, and I'm not sure if we'll have anytime soon. So I said, okay, well, let's just see. And so she came up with this really great plan about introducing a smaller, so we already had this 96-gallon cart that was phased into half the island. Half the island didn't have automated collection, so we had this complicated phase-in of the second half of automated, where we were also doing pay-as-you-throw rollout. It was super fun. And so we were offering customers 96-gallon or 64-gallon carts, and then I'm going to go to the lower bullet here and talk about the pricing. When we went to council, we had different pricing, but the council members weren't too keen on charging anything more than the $12. And so we had to compromise on pricing from the plan, but we did get the biggest, most important thing that we got when we were negotiating with council to set these fees is to get this 80% difference in price, which is so if you wanted a small cart, the 64-gallon cart, which is equivalent to 2 standard trash cans, then you pay $10 a month. But if you wanted the larger cart, which is equivalent to 3 standard trash cans, not much more volume, you'd pay $18 a month, which is an 80% difference in price. And actually that's what drives people to really think about, you know, how can I reduce my waste? What can I do? And I wanted to point out too that I forgot to say earlier, part of our program is, when we rolled it out, maybe why it was easy to implement the $12 fee initially, is we did give customers the option of opting out, that they could just use the transfer station for free. All they had to do is pay a base fee. So the base fee is $6, and it's charged to every single home, whether it's occupied or not. We charge a $6 base fee on the property tax. And then, depending on what kind of service they want, if they want the 64-gallon cart, we'll charge an extra $4 for collection, so the total's $10. If they want an extra 96-gallon cart, then we'll charge the $12 extra, so it's $18. So that's how we really were able to give people more choices. People do want choices to opt in or out. So another thing that we, you know, thought about a lot and realized the best thing to do was to just, even though we wanted people to really know this is a trash bill, we did tag it onto the real property bill because of administrative reasons. We didn't want to have a whole bunch of you know, a whole billing system for 18,000 customers. Real Property already had that. So all we did was add a module to their billing system. And we do, you know, refunds and switches and card. We have our hands full for sure. We only have 2 billing specialists who are great workers, but they don't have to collect from 18,000 customers.
So you're collecting from the property owner. If they're renting, then they deal with the renter.
Right.
So passing that on.
And it's really an individual choice. We don't really see, we think mostly that the renter doesn't see these fees. Every once in a while they'll call and say, my landlord said to call to get a bigger card or a smaller card, but mostly it's just the landlords we're dealing with. I think that it's about 70% of the people own their own homes. Another thing is it gets billed, I don't know, for people who have paid mortgages, they don't really see the bill. And about 60% of people have it through a mortgage company. So that's interesting.
I think something you mentioned yesterday
Yes,
that was
thank you.
interesting in doing this was that even though you told people that when things are getting started, if you can opt out of the service and only pay the $6, the default started at the $12.
Yeah.
People had to aggressively go get it reduced back to the $6. So you're starting with the assumption that everybody wants the service, but they have a choice to take their own time to opt out.
Yeah.
I think that's significant.
Yeah.
The system work.
Thank you. And you know, it's same with the 6496, the people that already had the 96, we had to decide, okay, how are we going to handle this? And the easiest thing for us to do was just say, okay, unless you tell us you want the 64, even though we're trying to get the 64, but it was too hard to like, the switch out thing was crazy. And we didn't hire like a company to do it. I did it like myself and with a bunch of other people. But it was just like a lot of work and it was a crazy time. But yeah, making those decisions up front, like, okay, how's this gonna work? Opt in, opt out, whatever, so yeah. But these are the results we are hoping to see. It's been kind of a short phase in and there's so many other factors, but this is why we sold this pay-as-you-throw, is that there would be some decrease in trash for several reasons, not just because people would recycle more, but they would source reduce, they'd you know, donate items more often, or they would not buy as much stuff, or they would get their yard waste where it needs to be instead of throwing in their trash cans. So this is why we did it, and we're the first ones in Hawaii to pass a pay-as-you-throw ordinance. I wanted to bring this up for planning because we just did this, and it's kind of interesting, as we recently did what's called a waste composition study, where we actually look and see what's in our landfill. I mean, you can guess, you can look at other municipalities, but you never know until you do one of these studies. So we contracted with Cascadia, and we had a pretty competitive solicitation for this, and Cascadia is the best. I mean, they've done so much work. They really specialize in this, and they were great to work with. So they set it all up, and they have so much expertise they recommended to us. So they did 10-day sorts, 2 of them, one in high season and one in low season. And what they did was they would randomly select commercial or residential loads of trash that were coming into the landfill. And they would, the load would get dropped, and we're talking this, you know, really long loads of garbage, and they just randomly pull about 200 pounds or more of the load from a random spot in the load, set it aside, and then just start sorting it. And they had like 71 different categories that they sorted it into. And see, those laundry baskets are what they sorted into. And then they'd weigh them and then tell us, you know, how much of which material. And they were separated into different classes. They're expensive studies because it really is labor intensive, and then they developed a really nice report that's on our website. And it's very detailed information about what's left in the landfill after all the stuff that we do to keep stuff out of there. So here is the pie chart of the major categories. And so so organics is our biggest, even though it says 18, food is part of that.
Green waste and food waste.
Yeah, they made food a separate category because we broke down food too. We wanted to know, because who knows, maybe someday we'll be able to do something with collect food waste and divert it. We have other plans that I'll talk about later, but we want to know, is it meat, is it not meat, is it in a package, you know, all these different really detailed things, so that if we did like a curbside collection, how easy would it be to participate in, and what kind of stuff would we want people to put in their carts. So
I just want to say food from like leftover food or whatever food.
it is.
So it's kind of, it just reminds me of this debate about food waste going on, like we buy too much food.
Oh, yeah.
It's this type of food. It's
Yes.
not like the peel of.
It is both. It's both.
Oh, it's both.
So there's you're talking about preventable food waste, and then
An actual like
scraps.
yes,
Yeah,
scraps.
yeah. Yeah, so it's everything, and it also includes the packaging too, because they didn't like pull apart the packaging. They just say, okay, here's this glass jar of, you know, tomato sauce that was half used. Okay, they weighed that, so, and that's all kind of detailed out. But yeah, organics we have the most of, and when the detail is even more interesting. But we have a lot of paper left, you know, and a lot of inerts. And so this information, the detail of it, we're using to figure out, you know, what our next steps are. So it's things, it's like rocks and things, yeah, construction, So, yeah, mixed residue, that category is something that's like 2 inches and minus. It's the biggest thing in the landfill, that it's stuff you can't do anything with. And that was kind of disappointing, is when the contractor was describing that. Oh, that's what you have the most of. And it's like, but what is it? It's like pieces of glass and pieces of this and pieces of that. That's, you can't separate them. You can't, it's like the plastic gyre out there or something. You can't really do much. But yeah.
Back on
Oh,
that
go ahead.
one.
Yeah.
At your residential transfer stations, you're not segregating out paper, in addition to plastic, paper or household hazardous material or plastic?
Yes, we are. So we have programs for a lot of this stuff.
She's gonna get to all that. This is what's actually in the landfill.
This is what's missed, because we don't have mandatory programs for residential. Yeah.
Remember, she's already told you 43% is not going here.
Yeah,
She's got a
43%. So this
for
slide
this.
actually,
This is the other 67.
this slide shows everything. So this is what we call waste generation, right? The whole bar is what's generated on Kauai. It's what comes in and is diverted or goes to landfill. So the dark blue or gray, however you see it, is the stuff that's in the landfill. And then the light blue is the stuff that we're actually able to divert, and we have percentages assigned to them. So the 64% for other organics, our consultant was really impressed. Most of that is green waste. And I'm going to show you, you know, what we divert most in the next few slides. Food waste is high too, and we don't pay for any of those programs, and I'll describe those later. And then metals, we ban metals from the landfill, well, from commercial especially, but even residential appliances can't go to the landfill. Glass, we're doing a great job, and that's mostly because of the bottle deposit law. And then paper, you know, that I was surprised it was low, but there's a lot of different kinds of paper. There's, you know, unrecyclable paper, and compostable paper is a category, and so there are all these strange different types of paper. But and then the inerts and other CD, here's almost 50%. We're doing a lot of concrete recycling, so that's why that one's so high. Okay. But so here's, I don't know if you can see that. So green waste is the king. We generate a lot, and we also divert a lot. People are really conscious. Like I said, you know, they love the island. They know green waste is valuable, and so is landfill space. And so, I mean, valuable as a potential compost product. So people do take the time to separate and haul their green waste for composting instead of just throwing it in their trash cans. Because we don't ban it from residential trash, but for commercial we do, and I'll describe that later. And some of these are just tonnages, you know, some things weigh more, and so they're going to be higher tonnages. So cardboard, I'll just pull that one out randomly, is most of that is from businesses because we have a ban on that. Glass bottles, most of that is from the High Five Redemption program, but I can get into the details here in the next 3 slides. I'm sure you are all familiar with the 3 R's, and people add R's to the top and the bottom and everywhere around. A lot of times I use the word recycling a lot though, because that's usually the term that people relate to. But waste diversion is the thing, right? Because the other, reduce and reuse are so much more important because you don't have to remanufacture. So reduce is the best. It's just preventing waste in the very first place. And that's where, for food waste, that's where they're really focusing a lot, is on source reduction. Reuse means that you're just using the same item again, either for the same purpose or for another purpose. And then, of course, recycling, remanufacturing. So there's a lot to putting a successful program together, and sometimes people think, oh, recycling should be free, people like it, it's easy, oh, it's done, we're done, we thought about it, we're done, But no, there's a lot that goes into it. So first of all, you have to have funding. There is infrastructure, which I'll describe, and lots of hauling and processing and things like that need to happen. You need staff to actually focus on these programs and make them happen. And like I said, the infrastructure part of that funding, you need a certain type of equipment like balers and other things to make programs work. And then you need to continue to monitor and evaluate them and make sure they're effective and innovate and improve them. And for customers or residents or commercial, they need to be convenient. And it's really nice if there's an economic incentive, like a bottle deposit law. And if it's a business, perhaps you could require it. Or even for residential programs, some municipalities have required, after there's a curbside program in place for decades, will require, it's mandatory. And then you just continue to educate, because people forget if you don't keep educating them. So as far as the infrastructure is concerned, the way we've done it in Hawaii is that the municipalities haven't owned the equipment, they haven't invested in the equipment. What we do is just go out to bid for a contractor to provide the services to operate a recycling program. And the infrastructure that is required is indoor warehouse, so that whatever bales, material baling, don't get wet and don't get degraded by the sun. You need a horizontal baler, something like this. It's big, and you need a pit feed, so that you can just throw stuff on the ground and shove it into that pit, and then it'll go up the conveyor. And our recycler has automatic eject, so all they're doing is just loading, and these bales are just popping out. And the facility that's close to port, and of course staffing and the ability to market. So this is our recyclers bale, and they're in there loading it, and here they are just popping out these bales. But the investment, is pretty substantial. Our recyclers baler is $600,000, including the construction of the pit. The pit is across the whole baler, and it's a pretty big piece of machinery. And then, of course, the skid steers and things to move stuff around. And then, in all the cases in Hawaii, the recyclers own the commodity once it comes to them. That they have to deal with all of the contamination, but they also get to sell it at market. And those are pretty volatile markets. There's something really scary happening right now. It's called the Chinese sword, where China's planning to just reject all plastic. And that's where Hawaii sends their plastic. And I think a lot of American recycling markets send their plastic there too. So they're planning it for the end of the year, but I guess it already started. Maui, I got an email from Maui today. They're like, they rejected us. We're screwed, So they're saying it's polluting the environment.
Yeah, because people are sending trash instead of processed materials.
Yeah.
And they are getting pretty messed up
Right.
bales
Yeah.
instead of shredding and washing.
Yeah.
They're just baling it, and it's creating a real environmental issue. They stated up 2 or 3 years ago
Yeah.
a law that
Yeah, the
prohibited it.
green fence.
But nobody made any kind of action on it, and we're paying off all the consequences
Yeah.
of it.
So we're not putting recycling before, we're putting it into the bin.
You should shred it and wash it, and then you have a value added to the material. Otherwise, you will be sending air.
Yeah, so none of these facilities shred and wash, you know, so that would just be a new thing that we'd have to do, or else send it to American market. I don't know. So it's a present problem with that. Like all of a sudden, within the last couple of weeks, it's something that's come up. So hopefully we can deal with it. The number 1 plastic for a bottle deposit law is very, very clean. By law, it has to be. It can't even have like a lime in there for us to take it back and give the customer their refund. So that stuff is going to be okay to recycle. But what I heard like for Maui is that they're considering stopping taking number 2 plastics, which are shampoo bottles, detergent bottles, and things like that. So I don't know. When I go back to the office, we'll see if we still have plastic recycling.
Is it the same contractor for the whole state, or basically is there forced back also? So Kauai had its own contractor, so they have their own volume?
Yes.
Because in terms of investment, it's
Right. Yeah, to ship it to another island for processing, it doesn't make sense. You really need to bale it on the island that you're on in order for the shipping to work at all. So every island has to have its own recycling system. A MRF is ideal, materials recovery facility, where you have a sort line, so you can take just everything in one container. But none of the islands have well, one has a true MRF. Oahu has a true MRF, and they do have curbside recycling. But the other islands are so small, it's hard to invest in that kind of infrastructure, which I'll talk about later. So this is what we do have for recycling, is we have these drop bins. Actually, our drop bin site is actually 4. This is just a picture of 2 of these bins. It's a 4-bin program. We take 7 different material types. They have to be source separated. So I'll just go here to show the material types so you can see. So we take these items grouped together. When I first started, we didn't have the steel cans or the plastic or the mixed paper. So we've been able to add materials to the program, and people love it. It does require some work, and it's an inconvenient program. So we don't have, people participate. Every time I go to the bins, there's people there, you know, but it's really hard to be able to determine what the recycling rate is for these materials. These, at these 8 locations, some of them are hauled every day, twice a day. Some of them are hauled twice a day. So people are doing it. So the most recent cost, it has gone up. What we do is we rent the bins, so we don't have to buy or improve or paint or do anything to the bins. And there's a lot in rotation for 8 sites, you know, being hauled all the time. And so we rent the bins, they do the hauling, and then they process the material for us for $800,000 a year.
Are those man sites?
No, they're not. There's a couple, actually there's 2 that are at our transfer stations. So even though it's not the transfer station attendant's job to, you know, watch what you're doing or say anything to you about the recycling, they're kind of technically manned. But yeah, they're unmanned. And, you know, we have some problems with illegal dumping, so that's part of the contract too, is the contractor's responsible for cleaning the site, making sure it's tidy, that it doesn't have stuff piled up next to it, so that helps. So this is a really great program that I championed because I knew it would work, is that and they did it on the other islands, is that we restrict certain items from businesses because there were already programs in place that they could participate in. So loads of commercially generated waste can't exceed 10% or more of cardboard, green waste, or scrap metal. So that means that the generators, the businesses producing this material, have to have a program for these materials, and they're readily available. So we started this a long time ago, probably 8 years ago, enforcing it. And when we did, the haulers weren't excited about it because they were going to be fined. And we said, you know, there's fines in there so that we'll have some teeth, we'll have somewhere to go with this if you guys don't comply. And they said, well, we can't help it. We can't control our customers. What if they put this and that? Well, so we said, okay, first of all, that's why we're putting 10% in case your customers do mess up. You're not going to get fined. And then we just had a series of like really volatile meetings with these guys, and then they we talked to our colleagues over on Oahu, and they had the same ban, and asked them, well, do you fine? What do you do? And they said, we just educate. When we see a load that's not in compliance, we'll work with the customer, we'll work with the generator and make sure they don't do it again. So that's what we told the haulers we'd do, and it worked. It does work. We our guys are looking at the loads as they come in. If there is a load that is, you know, in violation, they'll put, you know, cones around it, take pictures, send it to me, I'll document it, call up the generator and make sure that it doesn't happen again. But it's in the last 2 years we haven't even had violations. It's kind of just a learning thing. People didn't know. New businesses coming on board, things like that. So, like I said, we did need to have options for businesses, though, to participate in. We couldn't have the cardboard ban if there wasn't a place for people to recycle, businesses to recycle cardboard. So, our recycler, who's a private recycler, we needed to pay them to be able to allow businesses to recycle whatever they wanted, including cardboard, including the high five deposit material, which there's a large amount of that. And so the way it works is that we pay the recycler to just accept this into their own facility, and the advantages are what I just said, is that it enables these programs to go, and also it provides recycling opportunities for businesses. So businesses that want to recycle anything can just develop a program and know that they can take it there. They can self-haul it. Small haulers can use this program, and recyclers can go into business. Like we have a guy doing a curbside recycling for a fee program, so he is able to go and bring, he's a commercial hauler at that point, he's able to go and you know, participate in this program that the county facilitates. Something else that's going on is that large generators, some of them like Safeway and Kmart and other big box stores, are voluntarily backhauling their recyclables. So they have little downstroke balers in the back of their business to keep their recyclables tidy back there because they get so much of it. And then they just have these bales, put them to the side, and then when they have an empty shipping container available, they ship it back. And it works for them. They're avoiding landfill tip fees, and they're complying with the laws. So the good thing is there's extra stuff going back that we don't even regulate, like this plastic film. It's like a pallet wrap. It's on everything that comes to Kauai. I'm sure you guys are familiar. So we were surprised to see that. And then pallets. We don't have a composting solution for pallets right now just because of state regulation for permitting. So pallets are going back too, so that's great.
Surprises me, and sorry if you're going to get to it, but it seems that you're saying that it costs you money to do the recycling.
Yes.
So it is not a for-profit enterprise event for the contractor, like they don't recoup enough money that
Well,
they have to
they're
ask.
making money.
I'm sure they're making money,
but not just off the commodity. Especially for the Kauai Recycles program, the one that costs more, the residential. They're, you know, they have the capital cost of those bins that everything rusts. Like, I don't know if it does here, but things just rust like crazy. They turn to dust so fast, and so, you know, they're constantly investing in the bins. And the drivers, you know, hauling these bins all over the place. And the cost of doing business in Hawaii is really high, and so, you know, they have a significant amount of cost, and that baler, running that baler, the capital cost of having it, all the equipment. So the cost of the commodity, selling the commodity, does not offset all of those costs.
Like how much they make
They do report to us how much they make off the commodity every month, and
how much
it's
is it
very
compared to what they charge you?
it's very small. Now they can, we go out competitively. They're the only bidder, so this is the price we pay. But yeah, the what they make off of the commodity is small compared to what they represent as the costs.
So I guess at the end of the day, it's still not a for-profit sort of enterprise.
No. I mean, it can be maybe on the mainland where you don't have so much, that the cost of doing business isn't as high, and then the markets are closer, and there's maybe a MRF that you could take it to. There's all these different factors, mainland factors, that are different than island factors.
But I have to say, any mainland operation that I've looked at, even when they say, it's a private business, it's making money, but you find somewhere in that economic model that there is a sum of money being paid to them by the local government solid waste manager to make the system work.
Yeah, otherwise you will have otherwise you have no operating, you need some income.
You
There's
need
operational costs, electricity, manpower, and then what you do is selling out the final product, whatever you have, and then it evens up,
Yeah, somehow through taxation, through a government agency, a sum of money is going to the private business to make it work.
And how I like to think of it is comparing it to the cost of throwing away trash. You know what I mean? And if you're going to spend all this money on a landfill, you're going to spend all this money to put stuff in the landfill, to build and put stuff in there, then why aren't we investing the same amount of money or more in keeping these resources out of the landfill so they can be used again and again and again? So.
What is the cost of electricity in Kauai? The electricity cost.
Oh, it's 29 cents.
The kilowatt?
Yeah. You guys are what are you guys at?
33.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
We're at
high.
54.
Yeah, I thought you guys were higher.
Like, 33. So much better now.
We were higher at that time too, that's when oil was 100 gallons.
Yeah.
$100 a barrel.
I believe that's what it is. You just Google that one.
That's below us.
Yeah.
Where do the large generators, where do they send their recyclable material when they use empty containers? Do they send it to a MRF on the mainland, or?
That's a really good question. Because these aren't our programs, we learn about these figures when we do what's called our recycling rate. We just cold call businesses and say, hey, are you doing any shipping back? When we do the recycling rate calculation, we know a lot of what's going on because we're the ones who are paying for the programs. And then we get reports from the state about the facilities on island that are have to report regulatory on what they're diverting. But these are cold calls to business just going, hey, do you backhaul? And then they tell us. So we don't have a lot of detail. As soon as we lost some staff recently, but as soon as we're staffed up, that's the next thing I want to learn a lot more about backhauling because that's really interesting information. So what we do, have done since I started, because before I started at the county, I did business recycling at a nonprofit. So it's pretty easy to provide free technical assistance to a business if you know what you're doing and they're requesting it. So basically just we'll do a telephone consult if that's all they need, but if they need more, we'll go to the business, look in their trash, look at their recycling system, see how they can be improved, provide recommendations, and also give them like pre-developed bin signage, which is really helpful, and train their staff, whatever they need, to try to assist businesses in getting better programs together. And I was really fortunate because a few years after I started, this bottle deposit law passed. And just a stat on bottle deposit law real quick is that there's only 10 states in the U.S. that have deposit laws. And then the last one that passed before us was in 1987. I mean, they're just really hard to pass because
we tried it in Puerto Rico, and we said,
yeah.
we have it. And all the senators were like, yeah, we're signing it. And
Yeah.
the same day?
Yeah.
No, we're not.
Wow.
And
So
it
they must
fell
have been
after I don't
lobbied.
know how long. We fought for it, like,
They got lobbied that day?
yeah. They must have gotten some vacation somewhere in
Yeah.
the world, you know.
It's bad. It's really bad. So I wasn't heavily involved because it was a state law, but I know that we wanted 10 cents a container because that would be way more incentive. But we only got 5, and we wanted the bottles to go back to the grocery store. That's the place people bought them, and we didn't get that either. We had people have to just set up. Private businesses were just expected to set up these redemption centers. So it's definitely not a perfect program.
But you have it.
But
But you have it.
But we have it, and it's working. We have a 67% recycling rate, and these are the containers that are accepted, the container types, aluminum, glass, bimetal, and plastic, less than 68 ounces, and then, water's included. I mean, there's some states that passed the law before there was such thing as bottled water, and so it's not in there. And people drink a lot of bottled water. We're trying to get away from that in Hawaii, but they still do it. Anyway, there's things that are not accepted, which is milk, wine, and liquor, and those are the things that the lobbyists are really up on keeping out of those laws. And it can be very technical, like syrups are excluded and certain sports drinks and all of this. So it's a state law, and we have a county grant from the state, about $250,000, where we get 2 paid staff who can monitor the law on island and do inspections of the places that sell the beverage containers to make sure that they're charging the right price. And then they also inspect the places where people get their money back to make sure that they're doing it correctly there. And it's very technical. The state has been audited a couple times, and they're really afraid they're going to do things wrong. So they're very conservative in their approach to the law. So
just very quickly, I don't understand the resistance. Is the resistance from the manufacturer of the bottle or the seller of the product?
okay, so let me see if I can do it right. It's a complicated system, and I should have put this weird graph. We should have added it later. So what happens is when someone is importing a beverage or manufacturing a beverage on the state, they have to pay the state. They pay actually 6 cents, 5 cents for the redemption and 1 cent for the administrative fee. So the state gets paid up front. And then how the store recovers their costs is they charge the customer the 6 cents. And then when the customer goes to redeem the container, they get 5 cents back. And so unredeemed containers, all that money, it just stays with the state to run the program. That's how we can get our grant. And also that money goes to pay the recyclers for doing the work of redeeming them. And so there's a fee that's set by law, or by administrative rule actually. It's 1.5 cents per container is what the recycler who's like giving refunds back and managing the materials, that's what they get.
And so why the resistance from the movies? They object to what? What is the problem? Because they recoup their money.
They think that people won't buy a beverage because it costs 5 cents more. Is
Yeah,
that silly?
The same thing happened everywhere. They say it's a
Yeah.
tax.
Yeah, it's
But
a tax.
it's not a tax if you return the
Right. And probably they don't want to deal with the administrative aspect of it, So, and when this law went into effect, the state government we had a governor that was really supportive, and then as soon as it went into effect, we had a governor who wasn't. And so she didn't hire anybody to run the program, and it was almost like set up to fail. And so it's just, they have very few staff, and it's just really, and then they got all these audits, so it's not running smoothly, but we still have that 67% recycling rate. It really helps us. We use those staff, they're focused on high five, but we use them to go into the schools and educate kids about recycling. And this is something that they can get money for, so it like kind of and that it's a really, it's boosted recycling on Kauai significantly. If we didn't have it, it would be it'd be kind of depressing.
This is a bit of a question, but there's a lot of homeless folks who
Yes.
use that for additional work, is there like a number of like how much revenue homeless folks like make?
Yeah, we haven't tracked that. That's interesting. So what we do is, in all of our parks, we put out these blue bins with a specialized top that shows the different containers, and we say, you know, drop it and take them, whatever. We're not taking them. Whoever wants to can take them. So we have people that, you know, regularly go to these parks. I know of businesses like developmentally disabled people that go ahead and, you know, collect from people that they know. And then there's nonprofits that accept the material. We give away free bins to nonprofits. We give away loaner bins for any special event so that nonprofits working an event can keep the money. So there is a lot of that going on. And then people give it to neighbors, the kids, you know, friends, whatever. No, we haven't.
I just want to take a moment. We're about halfway through the slides. Yeah. And so I know you all want to ask questions and things, but I just want all of us to say there's a lot still coming, and we've been under about an hour. We're doing well, but it's a long presentation. There's a lot more coming. Want to give you all a chance to hear it. I think if Allison keeps going, it will take about another 40 minutes. The second half doesn't take us that much, but there's a lot here you want to hear about. So.
Okay, but I don't mind answering questions too, but yes, we don't want to keep you here forever, my goodness. Okay, so green waste diversion, I talked about it, our highest number, and so we accept all these things, Christmas trees even in June, people can bring us a Christmas tree, and so people use this program a lot. It costs us $1.2 million a year, but if you look at that tonnage price, it's half the price of landfilling. So this is a good cost for us. And businesses, they are required to divert their green waste, remember, they can't take it to landfill. So if it's a big business, they'll take it to one of the 3 permitted composting facilities that we contract to accept ours. They're regional. So they can go there, and I believe their cost is $10 a yard. But that's lower than the landfill tip fee. And then small businesses, we allow to use those coupons at the transfer stations. We do contract one location, it's permitted, and we put it out to bid. We had one bidder who had a permitted site that could take all the metals on Kauai. And so we pay them $55,000 a month to run this program, where they are accepting everything, fluids, freons, automobiles, everything. They have to process everything that comes in the door. And it's a free program for residents, and they just started charging businesses. So because the price of metal's gone down significantly since we started this program about 5 years ago. And we get a pretty good tonnage through that program, and they're doing a great job managing it. To facilitate this, and this cost is on top of the other cost, is we make sure, someone asked about illegal dumping earlier, we make sure that every resident has someplace close to them where they can drop off appliances and scrap metal. And like I said, everything goes to rust pretty quickly on Kauai, so we make sure these opportunities are available. That keeps us from having to do bulky item pickup, which is very hard to coordinate. Like Maui does one, and they're just eating up so much overtime. We tried one once and it didn't really work. So this is our solution, is to have a place that's close to people where they can take that stuff, and we don't see illegal dumping of it. So we pay $120 a ton to make sure that people have convenient places to recycle metal. This is for residents. Electronic waste, we have a law that says that manufacturers have to be responsible for recycling. It's not a very strong law. It just says they have to register, they have to pay a fee, and they have to do it. But it doesn't have any description of, what happens if they don't, or how they have to do it, or what they do on the neighbor islands. Oahu is where everybody lives. 1 million people live on Oahu, but Hawaii and Maui and Kauai, small places, not really worth their time to go and get their material at these other islands. So what happened was, when the law went into effect, nothing happened, and we weren't seeing any programs pop up. But then the legislature said that we should have a task force to perhaps change the law. So we went ahead and gathered, I was part of the task force, we had industry there and the state there all talking about, okay, how are we going to change this law to make it work? And the industry was so afraid of changing the law and having more regulation that they just went ahead and did what they were supposed to do. So right now we have a free program. It's part of our metals recycling facility. It's 6 days a week where people and businesses can bring e-waste for free, and it's working great. They're taking not only what is required to be accepted under the law, but other items. So we're the only island that has this free program. We're very happy about that because we used to pay $200,000 for a one-day collection event. That's how expensive it can be. This facility was built, this is our own recycling facility. It was built in the mid-90s after Hurricane Iniki hit Kauai, and it's built with federal funds, and it was supposed to be a reuse center, and this is the reason I was hired, was to figure out what to do with it, because they put it out to bid for reuse and nothing happened. It's not reuse isn't something that can make money, and that's what people who didn't know about diversion thought, that it would be this huge money maker, and you know. So when I came in, I thought, well, this is a big space. It has a few buildings, one on the back and one on the side that's not shown. And so maybe we can diversify and have different things going on. So right now, it's gone through many incarnations in the last 17 years. But right now, it is an office. It used to be my office, but now we have 2 recycling specialists working out of there for the High Five program. We have a drop-off for household batteries. And we do a packaging, peanut exchange, bubble wrap exchange, and we distribute home composting bins, which I'll tell you about. And then we plan to have another redemption center there. We had one before and it was great. We just don't have one now, so we're working on that concession right now. So home composting, this is my favorite program. This is the one that I started when I first started at the county, is that we did it in California and it worked great. So we evaluated a bunch of different backyard composting bin types, and there's a lot of factors you can rate on, but this is a very popular bin, and according to what we think are the most important things, like ease of transport, ease of setting up, whether or not it blows away in the wind, rodent proof, how long it lasts, what the cost is, things like that. This is the Earth Machine home composting bin, is what we've always distributed. And initially, when we started the program, I was training master composters. Sure. Okay. Training master composters and having them volunteer to train other people to do it, and that just didn't work. So now what we got to is just a really quick training video that people watch before they take a bin. And it just gives them the basics of how much brown to green to really have a good system going. It's simple, and we've done surveys of people that get the composting bins, and it's about a ton of waste every year that would have gone to their trash is going in these composting bins. It's so economical. So we buy a 40-foot, you have to buy a whole shipping container for it to be economically feasible, because the shipping itself is so outrageous to Hawaii. So we buy a 2-year supply basically, and it works out to be about $55 a bin. And we distribute 400 bins a year, and we also educate about other forms of composting. So this is just a great program that I would recommend. $6 a ton. Used motor oil is something that we used to get a state subsidy to run a program where we accept motor oil at every transfer station from do-it-yourselfers, not from businesses. And now they dropped this funding, but we still need to have the program because we need a place that people can responsibly drop their oil. So we have covered sites, you can see at the transfer stations. We also give them these containers, drainer containers, that can help them to drain the oil and then have a good container to bring it back in, something that doesn't fall apart or decay before it gets to the transfer station. So, you know, it's a high cost per ton, but it definitely protects our groundwater. And the landfill, the guys working, liquid waste is a problem too, and this could contribute to liquid waste going into the trash. It causes all kinds of problems. So tire recycling, this is another thing that I told you that we accept at the transfer stations. And this is a way that we have this at the transfer stations. It's a way that we are able to deter illegal dumping. So even though there's a law that states that whoever sells a tire is required to charge a fee and take the tire back, but the law also says that the customer can choose to keep the tire. They just have to pay the fee. So we don't know why we're getting a lot of tires, more and more tires, from people that say they're residents. We're not sure why people are electing to take tires back when they're paying the fee, but it does happen. So instead of having no place for these guys to take tires or requiring them to go to a recycler who's going to charge them to accept the tire, we go ahead and accept them for free. And it's thousands of tires a year are accepted through this program, and it's a high cost, but it does stop illegal dumping. We have, yeah.
Is the customer charged a fee at drop-off, and how much is that?
No, not by us. I mean, when they buy a tire, like a new tire, they're charged a disposal fee by the
Okay, so it's an advanced disposal fee.
Yes.
And do you know how much it is per tire?
I believe it's $5.
$5. That's
So household hazardous waste, we do semi-annually. Even though small quantity generators aren't regulated by EPA, we technically don't have to do this program. Maui doesn't have this program. But, you know, some of this stuff is pretty terrible, and we do get calls, you know, when people move away or someone dies, or, you know, they have to quickly manage this material. They need a place to take it. So we haven't been able to do ongoing by appointment. What we can afford to do is this twice a year. We also developed this program for the household batteries out of our own facility. So we got a permit to accept these 3 battery types from residents only. And last year we were able to divert 11 55-gallon drums from the landfill. And that cost goes under our household hazardous waste program. So when they come to collect that waste, we just give them the battery drums. So here's a snapshot of the cost, the $4 million. Boy, that's kind of bright, so I don't know if you can see it. But anyway, some of these programs are regulated by EPA and the state, that we have to have, you know, we can't put tires in the landfill. We can't put propane tanks in the landfill, electronics. So these things, you know, some of these programs are required and some aren't, but we're doing all of these at a price tag of $4 million. I did want to talk a little bit about food waste. We have food waste that's happening without us having developed any programs. Pig farming is a big deal on Kauai, and pig farmers want food for their pigs. So they just will volunteer to give slop buckets to restaurants, and then they take them every day. And so we got a lot of pig slop happening and a lot of food waste diverted that way. We have some excellent two food banks that compete with each other and divert a lot of food waste. And then, of course, the composting program diverts food waste as well. So this waste recovery, the food recovery hierarchy is interesting, though, because as solid waste managers, we're always thinking of composting, like the very bottom of this hierarchy instead of the top. And so now we've been starting to look at the top more, and there's a lot of programs for source reduction, but feeding hungry people and hungry animal are things that solid waste managers haven't traditionally looked at, and so that's what we're starting to focus on more. But there is, someone had mentioned that they knew about this national effort for food diversion, and it's so great because we don't need to reinvent any wheels here. The industry, the Food Waste Alliance, they're doing webinars all the time. They're really trying to educate people through there's a Save the Food campaign done by the Ad Council, where they're just raising awareness about the fact that all this food is going to waste, and there's a lot of things you can do. So what we did was we've linked on our website all of these tools and tricks for residents and businesses to be able to reduce their food waste. And there's lots of stuff that people can do and lots of money to be saved by them. That's the incentive right there, is to save money. So here's one of our local Save the Food campaigns. I'm talking about how much seafood is thrown away in Hawaii and how many kids go hungry. So we do have partners too that we work with that, you know, have programs that we help them to promote, like thrift stores, and there's businesses that are being responsible and taking back. So for instance, Home Depot takes back compact fluorescents, both bulbs and tubes, and Walmart takes back toner cartridges and ink cartridges, and these are all things that we never went to them and asked them to do. They just went ahead and do it, but they don't do it well as far as promoting it or getting the word out. So that's what we do. Craigslist is really great. We used to do our own reuse, you know, database, and it was just a pain, and it didn't work that well. But Craigslist really does work, so I'd highly recommend promoting that for reuse. And we have some building material sites that are on different sides of the islands that are great at even taking back paint and other items that we can't recommend that anybody throw in the landfill. So we like our partners. We do have a plastic bag law. You guys have one too. Ours went into effect in January 2011. And even though it doesn't have a big impact on the waste stream, in fact, maybe there's more bags in the waste stream, paper bags, it is really important for preserving marine life and for reducing litter, because they were everywhere before we passed this law. So our law says no biodegradable bags, no thick plastic bags, just no plastic bags. You can use paper instead. So initially we did get complaints from very scared retailers that this wouldn't work for them, and also that they had purchased a bunch of bags and they, you know, wanted to be able to use them up. So we provided a grace period for a certain amount of time for all the bags to be used, and then we had to cut people off at some point. And so we do enforce the law, and we just do it upon complaint. It's not like we're out there having to look, because nobody's carrying these plastic bags unless they made a mistake, unless they thought that they could use a thick plastic bag. Or yes.
So even the non-woven polypropylene bags that are so popular among all the stores, even like Whole Foods and others in the States, those are outlawed because they are a plastic, non-woven polypropylene?
No, those aren't.
Okay.
So it's just like a film plastic.
Right.
Yeah, that's all I'm talking about. Yeah, those aren't great either. And so when we went and started to promote, you know, participation in this program, we gave out really good bags. And we tested a bunch of bags, and we're like, we're not gonna, even though they're $1, we're not gonna buy a bunch of these bags and give them out, because they're just trash too, you know. We recognize that. One thing though that we like to see is there are certain stores, obviously big box stores, a lot of them don't have bags, but Walmart decided not to have any paper bags. They said, you know what, we'll just either sell bags or people can walk out with their cart full of stuff, and that's how Walmart does it. I was really surprised to see. So they don't give out paper bags. So that's the thing, is that there's still a lot of paper bags being used, and the whole point was bring your own bag. So I'd recommend that anybody who is going to propose a change to a law or do a new law, that they put in a fee for the bag. That's what they do in California. If you want a paper bag, 10 cents. And that really makes people think about whether or not they need a bag. Makes them remember. So as far as public outreach and education, we do a lot. When I first started working at the county, I made my phone number like the hotline. And then when we started to get staff, I shared the responsibility with staff to answer that line, make sure we always had somebody live to talk to people. We have a great website because of our IT department. We have a guide that we give out if people want paper, and that's constantly being updated. We work with the Public Information Office to do news releases on really important matters. And we give presentations to schools through our High Five specialists. And our mayor is a great entertainer. He sings and likes to be on television, so he has a television show that we go ahead and are interviewed on. and he does meetings where he asks us for information and provides that to the public. And we have booths. If it's a big event, we'll do an education booth. We do pay for newspaper ads and radio ads. Those are expensive. We give out grants sometimes when we have the money and the time to be able to administer them. And we provide free technical assistance to business, like I said. And one thing that we've developed recently, they're on our website, are these signs. We've developed like image-based signs for recycling so that people can look at a picture of what it is and know that, okay, cardboard goes there. And those are things, they're professionally done, and people can print them onto, you know, aluminum, or just print them up on stickers or whatever they need to have a really good looking sign, and they're customizable. And then we have flyers that have those image-based flyers, and a kid's website with a very small annual budget. So mostly it's us just doing the work to get the information out there. We even have participated in social media. We have this gal that was just left our office, but she had this little guy Blue on Instagram who got a lot of followers. She'd take him everywhere, raise some awareness there. We tried a web and cell phone app called Recycle Coach, and that didn't catch on. Nobody cares about having an app for trash. I don't know. I thought it was a good idea, but. And then other programs that we tried and didn't work are listed here. Recycle a shoe through Nike. They stopped funding the transport, so that didn't work for us. We did a bulky item pickup. It was outrageously expensive, and people forgot and didn't participate. Rio's network I told you about already. We did a worm composting, which people are really interested in. It's just that they accidentally killed their worms. So it was sad for me. I wasn't giving anybody any more worms after that. There is this catalog choice that individuals can use, and it's a great program, but municipalities can pay a fee to have stats for their whole community, and we just didn't get enough participation there. But this is, if anybody wants to do a source reduction, catalog choice does work. Just sign up, tell them what magazines you have, and they'll stop them from coming to you. It's great. And then we did use cooking oil. We had to stop the program only because of funding. Hopefully we'll be able to get that one back. We did pass a zero waste resolution several councils ago, and everybody was gung-ho, more gung-ho than they are now, about waste diversion. And we have this goal of 70% recycling. And it's everybody's responsibility, but we don't have a plan. So we'll see if we can get to the 70% point. There's a lot that we have to do, and from 35 to 70 is a big jump. 45 to 70, sorry. Yeah, and so some of the things we could do is increase organic waste diversion, concrete and asphalt we could ban. We can do better permitting at the composting facilities through the state. We don't control that. And then sludge or biosolids, that's 5% of our waste stream. So if we were able to manage that and not landfill it, then that would be a big percentage right there. This is a long slide to say that we did a lot of work on a ordinance to require businesses to recycle, and it took a couple years, a lot of meetings, and then that didn't work because the business community did not like that. They were confused and afraid, and no matter which way we went about it, it wasn't for them. So we had to pull that one, and we were also having some problems with the commercial recycling, the processing of it. That's before we got this new contract where anyone can take anything to our recycler. So maybe we could resurrect that in a few years, because we could get some good tonnage there, and that's what we're looking for. And not only just to ban stuff, but to have the responsibility be on the business to have a program. And it was an education program, but it still scared them. And then, of course, the materials recovery facility that I talked about is a place where we would be able to sort a single stream of recyclables, everything in a blue container. We put it on a sort line, it actually look like that. It'll be very manual, as opposed to if you look up MRFs online, there's some crazy automated ones, you know, but we're not that big. The scale would be much smaller and very manual. And we have already selected a site, which is the resource center that I talked about. It's just that now it's the point where we have to fund it, and we're funding the landfill, and all our money's going there. So hopefully, when there's more funding available, or a different administration or different council who controls the budget mostly, will have an opportunity to get that MRF going, because that will facilitate the curbside recycling, which all costs more money. So, but it is a way to provide the convenience, to raise awareness, and to get more recycling happening. I want to end on a positive note about this extended producer responsibility, which is when the manufacturer is tasked with being responsible for the end-of-life costs. They'll put a fee at the front end, and well, that's one way of doing it. But basically, they're responsible either voluntarily, it could be negotiated, or it could be a law that creates that responsibility. But what it ends up doing is creating a higher quality product that's more durable, less toxic usually. And so there's examples in Hawaii. We have the bottle deposit law, the electronic waste law, and the tire recycling are all EPR. And then in the US mainland, they're working on these new materials, carpets, mattresses, and paint. So that's a really good focus, is going with the EPR. That's what they do in Europe, and it works really well, even with things like packaging. So to sum it up, you know, it's not rocket science, but it sure isn't easy to manage all of this. You need a lot of stuff in place, like staffing, planning, leadership, funding, infrastructure. You need to integrate all of these things, and you need to involve the community and make them aware that the programs exist. So it's always a work in progress. So thanks for listening to the whole thing. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you covered it. I can't remember what, you just said sludge was 5%.
Yeah.
What was the percentage for green waste and for food waste and for paper and cardboard?
Oh shoot, well, you know,
In the graph, it
paper-
was 10% food waste
Food
and
waste is 10.
18% other greens.
18.
food was 10, but you know, yard waste is as part of a larger category called other organics.
It said 10%.
Yeah. So food waste is 10. Other organics, though, includes it includes the sludge, actually. And so green waste is pretty small. We do have the stats on our webpage if you want to look at the individual.
This is post-diverting all that green waste, because this is what's in the
Right.
landfill.
That's what goes to the landfill.
That's what's in the landfill.
Same with the sludge, like 5% is going to the landfill.
So it seems like you got a real opportunity with composting that could cover your sludge, your green, your food waste, and your paper cardboard.
Yeah, sludge can be, and we're looking at more creative ways to deal with some of that paper. Like, what if we put it in with composting? It doesn't necessarily have to go. Yeah. It's just all about permitting. And not only is the state conservative when it comes to the bottle bill, they're conservative when it comes to permitting stuff. So,
Okay.
but we're hoping,
Why is it that they're not allowed to shred pallets? Why is the argument? What is the argument?
Okay, there's three things. One is the noise issue, which,
What?
another one is that,
Grinders are really,
Yeah.
really noisy.
well, but the nail and the grinder, because the grinder is grinding green waste anyway, right? But the nail, and then also,
There's a way to fix that, I can
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
you that.
I
And then
know.
what else?
they say that they're concerned about the difference between the treated pallets and the untreated pallets, which are obviously different.
Of course,
Yes.
they are painted, you can
Yes.
separate the ones that are not treated from the ones that are treated.
And I think there's only two things. Those are the two things, the noise and the treated pallets. What has to happen is that the composter, the biggest hurdle is the state allowing it to happen, but we also need the composters to apply for a change in their permit. And they keep saying they're going to do it, and then they hadn't done it yet because it's a big, long process. So we have a composter now that's going through the process, but it's been taken that long, like 17 years, yeah.
And one more question, have you considered biodigestion for dealing with all those highly energy loaded food traceable organics?
Yes, yes, we have looked into that. So we would have to invest in that too. Yeah. But yeah, that's definitely something that that we're considering. Yeah.
For me, I'm still a little bit wondering about the economics of it. So have you computed like an avoided cost for like basically how much you save because you don't send all that to the landfill?
Right. Well, we think about like, avoided costs. So when we're talking about a program, hey, this program is this much per ton versus landfill costs. But then there's also avoided space in the landfill since it's filling up, and some things are more bulky than others. You know, this is another thing that we're asked to come up with when we're proposing a program or thinking about cutting
So
a
you haven't
program.
computed the avoided cost?
For which thing?
For your whole program by having 45% recycling.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's why I made up one of these charts. Was created because just this last council meeting, or this last budget process, one of the council people was, well, what if we just throw it all in the landfill? You know, and we said, well, we'll lose this much tonnage. We'll lose this much tonnage, which I don't have the total. But really, I told him, you know, you shouldn't think of throwing it all in there. First of all, certain things are regulated and you can't throw it in there. And secondly, some program costs are really high, and so those are the ones you should consider cutting, you know, high per ton, and then go ahead and, you know, keep the ones that are low.
But I guess my question is,
Okay.
what is your avoided cost of living?
A total, I don't have it.
You don't
Sorry
have it.
about that.
That you make a lot of assumptions when you're doing that too. You know,
But still,
there's not one number that you can say is the avoided cost. You have to say, if I'm looking at it on this basis, it's this, and I'm looking at it on this basis, it's that.
Right.
Particularly when you have when you're talking about a landfill, and filling up a landfill, it's multi-dimensional.
Right.
Sure, but I mean, I think the fact that it's not profitable at the end of the day, I think
Well,
it's...
some are and some aren't.
You
Some
mean-
are below, like the green waste, $60 a ton. That's where we get most of our diversion. It's half the cost of landfill. So,
But
yeah,
you need to evaluate it, because in all those costs, there's like the logistics, and if you're carrying material compacted or not compacted, so all of these things can be sharpened up with the path. As she says, if you don't start, you will never know. Then you need to start monitoring, following up, and improving, of course, the operation.
yes.
And I think from a management standpoint, we were talking with you yesterday, when you manage to reduce the cost in one area, that actually gives you potential now to go say, now I want to spend that money to try to reduce another one. Because the public budget process, what you're really talking about, is not a bottom-up budgeting process. So if we're spending $15 million, if something went down, we don't really want them to take the money back, but we could use it another way. So it's not a zero-sum game. It's more what's my next opportunity. And I'm sure Allison has a wish list of all the projects she'd like to do. And so as soon as the opportunity comes up, she's looking to see which is the next one I can sell, which is the next one to order.
Murph's on the wish list. Yes.
So I'm curious how you use the Cascadia Consulting, how you've used that in outreach.
The study just happened. So when we went to present it to the council, they were like, okay, so what are you going to do right now? And I'm like, we're just showing you the results. Give me some time here. But I think for me, the first thing that dropped out was that there's all this organic waste that, you know, like the sludge and the pallets, and even gypsum board is compostable, you know, that we should probably be finding ways to compost all that stuff through the existing composting systems and not having to create a new one. So those were just things that came to mind. But.
My other question has to do you know the median household income for Kauai and or a level of education for the island?
Not off the top of my head, sorry about that, but I would Google that. Yeah.
Hi, Allison. I'm sorry if I missed it because I came in late, but could you explain sort of like the structure of your office and the funding source for that?
Yeah, so what I have that you missed.
So it's you, and then you said you have a couple of people who
I
are funded
don't,
on the bottle.
I didn't really explain the structure of my office. So I explained the government, we have our administrative body led by the mayor, and he's my boss's boss's boss. So I work in public works, and I am in the solid waste division, and I'm the deputy to the head of solid waste. And then I run the programs, and most of them are diversion programs. And then we have an operations section that oversees the landfill and the transfer station and the collections.
Okay, that would be in a standard landfill
Yeah.
operations right now.
Yeah.
Related to recycling.
Yeah, so you're interested in the recycling? Yeah, and the recycling, I have 2 specialists that work with me, and then I have the 2 state-funded people. And then we get support, though, from our boss, from attorneys, from purchasing and all these. We're not doing everything on ourselves. IT, yeah. So ever since I started working there, I always said, we did this and we did that, because it was never just me. It's all the county working together and, building those relationships to make things work are really important.
Basically, 5 people then that are involved in this recycling.
Yes.
We use
5.
yourself and
5
then-
people.
And 2 of them funded through the bottle bill?
Yes, yes. And they really do focus on the bottle bill. So I really rely on the specialists the other 2 working for county have to be really strong to do all these other programs with us, yeah.
So, question, at the transfer stations, do you have issues with people putting things in the wrong container and then cross-contamination between their recyclables?
So there's 2 things at the recycling centers. We get some contamination there. It's about 5%, and they're unmanned. At the transfer stations, they are manned sites, so I haven't heard a lot about problems with things going in the wrong places or anything. They're supposed to be directing, people to the right places. We did actually, though, get some Duke University students who were doing a survey. They started right before I left to come here, and they were looking at that. What happens when people come? What are they bringing? Are they putting it in the wrong place? So I'll have some results later. But it's hard to know unless you're there. So.
And then also the composting containers. I think on the slide I saw it was 41,000. Is that like the cost for all the ones you were giving out?
Yeah, so it's a full container load. So it's 870 containers. And like I said, I'd recommend buying a full container because a lot of it is shipping costs. So it's most economical.
Do you use, one thing a discussion we had here during the last recycling meeting was sort of using empty containers to send stuff back.
Yeah.
Do you do that to reduce shipping costs? Is that something that you
Yeah. Well, I know the backhauling is happening, but I don't know, how that impacts shipping costs or what the details are on it. That's something that I need to learn more
So
about.
that's within that store, that business.
Yeah.
So if it's Kmart, they
Yeah.
can choose to ship their
Right,
stuff
they
back.
can ship it back. Now they're avoiding the tip fee. They're complying with the law.
somehow
And I
it's cheaper?
assume that it's practically, the same price to go back. Maybe they have paid for weight. I don't know. I'd be interested to find out.
Yeah, you mentioned there that the large back shipping was plastics, cardboard, and pallets, so obviously those guys are paying something less than $119 a ton in order to be able to do that. Here, we've got guys back shipping tires, and they can, I know one guy on St. Croix who, he makes about $1,500 a container, and that and where he's making that money is off of the $6 fee that he's collecting per tire, which is the law. And so he basically takes that $6, he uses that, and once he's paid for his container, he ships out, he's netting about $1,500 on the container, like tires.
Great.
And so I think that, but to me, when you say $119 avoided cost on the plastics, cardboard, and pallets, that tells me that, again, back to composting, the cardboard and the pallets could be shredded and used in compost for application on non-food crops or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there's a real opportunity there for not shipping that and not incurring the carbon costs of shipping it back to the States or China, which was my next question.
Yeah.
Where is it heading? Is it heading to China for the most part? Where the east way? So virtually all that stuff's on its way to China.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is back up into our air.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much for being here for so long, guys, and for your interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. Presentation on our website, www.coralbaycommunitycouncil.org, and we have a lot of other information on the website too. Thank you.
Perfect.